Missed some good stuff right at the beginning, and I don't want to do that again.
Perfect. Well, it's great to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you. I'm good. How are you? Busy, of course. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Busy. Just was in Morocco, finishing up filming True Believer. Went to Paris for a few days, met my
Yeah.
wife there, and then we just got here to the East Coast for a few days, and then off to book tour
Book
directly from here.
tour.
So back for about a month and a half, little plus on the road. So it's all good. It's
Are
all
you
good.
are you starting at Poison Pen?
Starting a Poison Pen with David Morrell
Yeah.
on the Sunday, October 5th. So, yeah, creator of Rambo, author of First Blood, and of course, many other books to include Brother of the Rose, Fraternity of the Stone, League of Night and Fog. Very influential books to me into the genre
Absolutely.
in general. Moved the genre forward. Took the best of UK spy fiction with Le Carre and the best of US spy fiction at the time with Ludlum and combined those to move the genre forward. But it's such an honor for me to be with him on that opening day.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. I mean, absolute legend. And there were a couple of things in your book that I don't know if I was looking a little bit too hard for Easter eggs. One of them, there's a necklace, a green necklace that what's the name of her care I'm
Yeah.
looking for the name of her character.
Oh yeah, and of course my mind is blanking.
Yeah.
Uh,
Here I've got it.
Ella on Ella.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm asking the question kind of out of order, but it just popped into my head because of what we were talking about. So she wears this green pendant necklace, and in Rambo 2 or Rambo First Blood 2, he gives his girlfriend this
Yeah,
jade. Is that a nod to Rambo, or is I'm just looking too hard at that?
certainly is. It
Yeah.
certainly
Okay.
is. Yeah, you got it. You got it.
Yeah.
You actually dedicate this book to David Morrell.
Yeah.
But actually, before we jump into all that stuff, how's everything with you going? How's your writing going and your project going?
Chapter 30 right now. So
Job.
yeah, so it's coming along. I'm really excited about it. Actually, this may be DeMille's last manuscript, but he's got a book coming out, The Tin Man. Have you heard
So,
about it?
yeah. I can't wait to read it with Alex.
Yes. So he's woven AI into that novel a little bit differently than the way I'm kind of looking at it. But I really this cross genre sort of movement I think is picking up a lot of steam. And so my book is going well. I just of course when Charlie Kirk got shot, tragic day for many people, including myself. And I saw you posted a really heartfelt message about Charlie Kirk. But that brought a lot of media work for me, so I ended up doing a ton of Newsmax stuff.
Yeah.
So this week, I'm really getting back into working on my manuscript. So I really appreciate you asking about that.
Of course, I'm looking forward to reading it when the time is right. Anything I can do to help.
Well, I will certainly send you something when the time is right. I think I've got about 5 chapters that I think are probably ready to read, but I'd rather just give you the whole
Oh,
thing
yeah.
when it's
Yeah.
done. And
That's the way
whenever
to do
you
it.
have the time to take a look at it, that'd be fantastic.
Wonderful.
Um, I was going back trying to figure out which book I did the first review on. I thought it was Savage Son, but I don't think so. I think it was In the Blood.
Okay, that's the first one that introduces Alice and AI.
Yes. Yes. And the reason why I thought about that, I saw your YouTube video that you did your tour of your library, which was really interesting. Yeah.
Oh,
And you said that Savage Son was before Amazon and all the rest of it, and it was your first New York Times bestseller.
mhm.
So Terminalist was not, Savage Son was. I know this doesn't have a lot to do with Cry Havoc at the moment, but what was the difference? What do you think the difference was that propelled Savage Son to the New York Times list? What was that the secret sauce? in your
Yeah,
mind?
it's building the readership and having time to do
Oh,
that. And Savage Son went on, and then Terminal List went on, and True Believer went on also. So all three. So everything's been a New York Times bestseller, but the first one to hit was the third one, and then the other two popped on because it got that visibility. But
got
it
you.
was
Right.
also
Right.
before, which is I'm so thankful for, was before I did Rogan, before I was on any big Fox shows,
Mhm.
before Chris Pratt said anything. So I love now that that's the case because now no one can say the only reason you hit the New York Times list is because Chris Pratt tweeted or because you know Rogan or whatever.
I don't know.
So
I don't know what kind of jerk would make a statement. I know there are people out there like that, but yeah.
yes, it seems the social channels seem to encourage
Oh
that sort
yeah.
of thinking and commenting. The golden rule seems to have fallen out of favor on the social
Yeah,
channels.
yeah, for sure.
And, I like try to think about that and instill that in the kiddos on a daily basis. I think it would be helpful for all of us. But the secret sauce wasn't secret. It was just continuing to build throughout the year, even when the you're not promoting a book.
Yeah.
Meaning there's so much noise today. It's probably I would say, one of the more difficult times in modern history, anyway, the last 100 years, let's say, to write a book and get it out there because you are in competition with so many
Mm.
other entities, platforms. You are not just in competition with the 6 o'clock news and with a movie that's coming out on Friday or Saturday that you're going to go see, or a
Mhm.
TV show you want to watch. It's 8, 9, or 10 p.m. You are in competition with every movie and every TV show that's ever been produced that now can be watched at any time
Mhm.
on a device that's on you or one that's close by, like an iPad or a
Right.
larger screen in your living room. And you are also being encouraged to not read by all the apps on said phone
Oh
that
yeah.
is addicting you to scrolling that benefits no one except the company that makes said product
Right.
and the device on which this app is on. So it certainly doesn't benefit the individual or the citizenry to be constantly scrolling and outraged, but it
Mhm.
does keep you from reading a 500-page novel. It keeps you even from sitting down and watching a 2-hour film.
Right.
Looking
Mhm.
at it, it's so you are now in competition with all of that. I recognize that at the get-go because I looked at publishing and writing like a battle space as I got
Mhm.
closer to the publication of that first novel in March of 2018. And just like in Iraq and Afghanistan, I'm looking at that battlefield and I am looking for gaps in the enemy's defenses. I'm looking for ways to capitalize on momentum. I'm looking at ways to adapt to that enemy that's adapting to me and trying to anticipate my next move.
Mhm.
And so I looked at publishing like that and realized that now I am in direct competition with all of these other things that are vying for people's attention that are much more powerful than a voice who does not even have a social media account yet. And I'm not coming from politics, have no following, not coming
Right.
from sports where you have name recognition. I'm starting from zero, from scratch. What does that mean? Well, it means that I need to add value to people's lives throughout the year in a meaningful way that allows me to connect with them and make them a part of this journey with me in a way that is positive and enhances their life rather than just adding to the noise.
Mhm.
Okay, how do I do that? Well, I can learn how to use these social channels. It's a tool, just like anything else, and can be used for good or for ill. How do I use this for good, and how do I use this to now build a readership, build an audience in the 21st century? Okay, it's got to start doing that. I knew I need a website. I'm going to need a blog. Okay, now I need a social media presence. Okay, now I got to do a podcast maybe. Okay, continually. So it's a nonstop book tour. It's a
Mhm.
nonstop promotional tour. Usually,
Mhm.
authors would just do, and most authors today still just ramp up a tiny bit before they do a book tour.
Right.
Silent.
Right.
And what they do throughout the year is essentially the cover of their book on their social channels.
Mhm.
That's it. They're for the most part. This is very I'm generally speaking here, so no one get
What?
offended.
Right.
If you get offended, leave it in comments because that only helps this podcast.
Right.
Get really angry at each other in the comments. Leave a ton
Right.
of nasty comments.
Yeah.
So, but typically that's what I saw when I'm looking at the battle space. That's what I'm seeing from authors who still rely on their publisher to do the same things that they did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, early 2000s that maybe they're still going to do today for someone if your last name is King or Patterson, but
Yeah.
not if
Right.
superhero file. I haven't sold a book yet.
Right.
So the good news, though, out of all that, is that I can do things that authors could not do back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And so I just recognized that, started doing that, and built at a slow, gradual,
Mm.
probably appropriate way, all based off because I didn't have a team, didn't have anybody. It's just me. Now I have some people that help, chief of staff and someone who does the merch stuff, people that help with the podcast, that sort of a thing. But at the beginning, I didn't have anyone.
Right.
And for the merch, it was just me and my wife at the beginning, and her packaging up things in the house and stuff all over the living room and the bedroom and all of that, and her packing the car and driving down and putting it in the post office and all of that. So it's more recognizing the battle space, adapting to that battle space, and essentially being on a year-long book tour,
Mhm.
actually multi-year book tour, so that you can build a readership from nothing. So that's I think was the kind of the differentiation is that by the time I got to Savage Sun, I had built it to a place that had the numbers to get on that list, which then exposes it to an entirely new audience, and then continue to build throughout the year so that the next year the other one moves up the charts, moves
Mhm.
closer to that number one position, and then hit it on the audio, and then hit it
Yeah.
across the board on the next one with combined hardcover and audio. And then had multiple on the audio. I think I do that on the tour up the stage, up the stairs to my office. You can see I have three or four
Right.
books on at the same time. So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool as well.
Well, that's something that I always thought distinguished you from everything else that I've seen. I'd say from 90, probably 99% of the authors out there. And the way you described it is exactly accurate. And this is from my perspective that, everybody seems to kind of wait until, maybe a couple months before, the next book drops, just to start engaging again. And that's something that I noticed about you and even talked with my wife about. I was like, man, how does he keep all these balls in the air? Because especially early on, it's like I know this guy's doing his own social media, and I try to do my own. I try to build my platform and all the rest of it, and it's challenging. I know it's challenging and very time consuming. But you talked about something so important, which is adding value to people's lives, and people. I still think a lot of people I talk to when you talk about a thriller or fiction generally speaking, sometimes the reaction is, well, fiction, I don't really have time for that. I only read nonfiction because, fiction, that's just you just it's escapist,
Waste of time.
whatever waste time. Nothing could be further from the truth. You've always done this with your fiction, and I think especially with Cry Havoc, you're adding so much value, and the truths in fiction. I think we've talked about this before, but the truth in fiction is actually more true than the stuff that's in nonfiction because you're talking about big truth, the big eternal principles in good fiction anyway. But Cry Havoc, Jack. I mean, I tell you, my all-time favorite thriller is Tom Clancy's Without Remorse. And maybe it's like a revenge thing, and that just kind of strikes a note with me, the sort of the revenge sort of storyline. But Cry Havoc, dude, I'm telling you, I kind of go back and forth. Should I stick it on the book next to on the shelf, next to Without Remorse? It's right there. And it's wonderfully written. And I think that your nonfiction book on Beirut, my opinion, seems to have really informed and kind of impacted your writing with Cry Havoc, especially as to the aspect of adding value because you're talking about Vietnam, you're talking about some really politically charged issues. When I first started reading it, I thought, why is he setting this in Tet? Why is this? Why is Tet? Well, as you talk about in your book, Tet is really central to the Vietnam conflict. And in fact, I grabbed a couple books that you recommended by, I think it was you, Moyar.
Oh yeah, yeah. Mark Moyer, Dr. Mark Moyer, amazing,
Yes. Uh,
amazing. Working on his third right now in the trilogy. He has two
yeah.
out specifically on Vietnam, but he has a third one that he's working on that I hope he gets out in the next year or so.
Oh, I thought you said you were reading it. which
Oh no, I read the first two. He has other ones too, but he has these two that
yes,
break down Vietnam in these
yeah,
blocks. He's
yep,
working on the third one in that trilogy right now.
yep, and that's what I'm waiting for is the third one. Just the introduction to Triumph Forsaken, which I think is the first one. Just the introduction to that alone is a tremendous overview of Vietnam, why we were there, why we quote unquote lost the war. And you touch on some of that stuff. One thing that I was not aware of that you mentioned, I think it's like in chapter 26, is the timing element where the NVA and the Viet Cong, they were using two different time systems. You
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit. I thought that was a really interesting piece of history.
Yeah, I have to go back and look exactly how much they were off by. I think it was an
An
hour,
hour. Yeah.
because that they had recently changed over from whatever time they had been on to this new time zone, essentially, which
Yep.
caused half. I don't forget exactly how it caused certain elements involved in Tet to be an hour off. So it gave people an hour to fortify a bit of resistance, hearing what's going on across the country and other places. Well, okay, it hasn't happened here yet, but it could. This might be an all-out attack across the country. Let's make sure everybody's in place. Okay, make sure get those lights going. Whatever they did, but put them on alert because it didn't all happen at once. They did have that 1 hour of breathing room.
Right.
In some cases, obviously not every case, because some of the people did hit at the time they were supposed to, and others were an hour off. So I wasn't aware of that until I started doing this research either. And this one was definitely the most researched of all my novels to date, and took much longer than I thought, because
Yeah.
I thought I had a good understanding of Vietnam conflict. I'm a student of warfare, have been my entire life, so I thought I was starting from a solid foundation. I had incentive to study because I was going to apply those lessons in Iraq and Afghanistan. Also, being a child of the '80s, I have that popular culture input from that perspective, and my parents were college students of the '60s, so
Right.
I grew up with that perspective as well. So all of these things I thought gave me I thought this was going to be the smoothest book to write. And by smooth, I mean the most efficient based on research, because I had spent my life researching it, I thought. And it wasn't enough to do a chapter on finance like I had to do in was it Only the Dead? That I'm still recovering from that, I think. A couple of chapters on finance and wealth creation. And there's another one in, well, The Devil's Hand, about AI and quantum computing.
Right.
That one took a long time. Or no, sorry, The Devil's Hand was bioweapons research in the blood.
In the blood. Yeah.
Quantum computing. So those things that I had no touch points with in my actual life, and required me to actually learn them for the first time. This I thought was different because I had this foundation. Found out very quickly that I had only scratched the surface. And when I went to do something like this, which is write a book where every sentence is written through the lens of 1968, because I think the easy route to go would say they're listening to Creedence Clearwater Revival or Jimi Hendrix, it's 1968, and then essentially take away all cell phones because there are none, and then drop a contemporary thriller into Southeast Asia.
Right.
I did not want to do that. I did not want anyone to even have any sort of an inkling that I could have done that. That meant every single person in the book, every character, can only bring their life experience up to 1968 to
Mhm.
bear on a conversation, on a situation, on a problem, on a decision, whatever that might be, perspective. They can only use their life experience up to that point. And wow, that meant I had to really research every single person's background in order to let that, because usually I can put a background in a contemporary thriller
Mhm.
and then have that person have a conversation with another. That's fine. But if we're in 1968, that turned out to be a whole nother deal. Now I'm bringing all these different people with different ages from different countries and different perspectives and different life experiences up until 68 into conversation and into
Yep.
interaction with one another. And that was a much more akin to historical fiction than
Mhm.
anything that I've attempted in the past. And really took a lot more time than expected, which is why we're having this conversation in October and not in June, because it was supposed to come out in June. But for me, it's the book. It's not that it wasn't ready; it's that it wasn't done. And so I just blew past these deadline after deadline because I'm working away, and wanted to make this the best book it can possibly be, which is always my goal. Better than the last book. That's always my goal. And I think I did that. I think I've done that every time. This just took a little longer than expected, and it takes a lot to fend off publishers who need to get a book out there because they need to make their quarterly numbers, and now they're counting on you to help with that because of the numbers that you're selling, and you still have to resist it. As an author, I can see how much pressure is put on now and what that can mean, and I didn't want that to affect the pace of the book. I did not want anyone to ever say, "Oh, it seemed like you got to 100,000 words and just wrapped it up," which is something you can typically hear if you look at reviews for let's say books in this genre.
Well, it shows.
And I wanted to make sure this is the best book that I could possibly have written at this time. It's like The Terminalist was the best I could do at the time. I'm sure I can go back now and make it better. Devil's Hand was the best I could do at the time. I'm sure I could go back now and make it better. In the Blood, like all of them, I think I could go back and make better now, but they're the best that I could do at that time. And that's what I always want to do. I want people to have my best effort, my heart and soul into every word. And because people are trusting me with time that they're never going to get back. And that's something I take extremely seriously. So I'm never going to get to 100,000 words and just be like, oh, got to wrap it up to make my deadline and to make sure I hit this date. I will never do that. I'm always going to fight against that. And it's tough though, because you are getting a lot of pressure to get these things done
I,
on time. These tough
yeah,
days.
I can't imagine what that. I can't imagine what that's like. You know, your first manuscript, right? You've got technically forever, so to
All
speak.
the time in the world.
Yeah, but I think, and I've heard a lot of authors talk about this. Well, the rubber really meets the road when you've got a deadline to meet. Can you produce under deadline? But you talked about, you know, how your books have progressed, and that's absolutely the case. I think each book is better than the next. Of course, they're all standalone. Anybody can, you know, pick up whichever book in the series that they want to, and they can start wherever they want to. They can start with Cry Havoc, of course, but um, what I thought too was like all the details, like the clothing, the vehicles, all that stuff. So, where did you go to resource that? Where did you go to? I mean, I can see how time consuming it was because just to get a woman's dress right, like a period
Oh,
dress,
that
right?
took forever. That took forever.
Yeah.
So I have no time there. I have nothing. Not starting from anywhere. At least guys' clothing, I'm starting from something.
Right.
But girl ones was tough. Oh my goodness.
Uh,
But it was cool actually because you're going back into fashion of the 60s and it's actually fascinating. But even I should say for some of the guys, like I hadn't really thought about it too much, but I'd asked myself a question. Oh, when did guys stop wearing the chubby hats with suits? Oh, and was that
yeah.
JFK doing it? And then how did it phase out over the years? And would it make sense for this character who's a fan of espionage thrillers to wear one still? Okay, yeah. But making it dates him. Okay, yeah, it does. Like all those things play in. So I wanted to make sure that I was really bringing people back to 1968. I wanted this to be a time machine to 1968,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
I didn't want I wanted people who lived that era to know that I at least put in the effort to get it right. Even if I get some things wrong here or there, that at least the effort went in to get those things right. And particularly for the guys of MACV-SOG or anyone who served in Vietnam,
Yeah.
I want
Right.
to know that I put in the effort to try to get it right, try to get that gear right, try to be very period specific, down to specific units and the years that certain weapons and knives showed up, all that sort of thing. I really tried to get right. And anything that I took a little liberty with, I talk about it in the author's note. Like there's a specific Soviet pistol that's like looks like a Derringer, and it's a like a suppressed little Derringer essentially is what it looks like,
Oh.
which is a very odd cocking mechanism.
Mm.
And it didn't come out until later, and a couple of years later. But I thought,
Um,
you know what? Maybe a GRU guy is testing one out, so maybe there's a possibility that he got his hand on a prototype,
well,
and you
this
got it 2
fiction.
years before it actually comes out. So, but I explained that in the author's note. So I did take a couple of liberties here and there, but not certainly not many.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. So I was going back trying to figure out, like I mentioned before, which book I did the first review on, and I ran across an article that you did for Town Hall, and I think it was about True Believer. This is going back a little while, and the reason why I bring this up is I was really curious. I know what our pre-pub backlog is like with the Bureau. I was wondering, do you still deal with pre-pub issues with DoD? And if because I think True Believer, if I'm correct, was the one where you had lines redacted out, which I thought
Yeah.
which I thought was really smart because it's more intriguing, I think, for people to see, oh, well, this part's blacked out. I wonder what secret thing I can figure out. But
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you still have those issues with DoD?
Nope, I stopped doing that after the third one, after Savage Son. So the first one I submitted because it was still close to my time in the military. My protagonist is a SEAL. So even though I know there's nothing secret in there, I still wanted to be safe, and so I turned it into the
Sure,
Office of
yeah.
Publication Security Review at the Pentagon, and they got back to me in 45 days, and I thought that's pretty good. They advertised 30
Days.
days.
Wow.
Yeah, 30 days
Wow.
is what they advertised. So I thought, 45 is not bad for a big
Right.
government bureaucracy. And they took out 9 things that were all totally ridiculous. But I was like, okay, well, how do I deal with this now? Because if you're applying logic to this and you changed those, then it would follow that you would need to let them know what you changed to make sure that it also was doesn't have
Right.
any secret in it. But that's not how it works. It's
Right.
the whole thing is so mind-boggling to me. And also, where it doesn't work is if an admiral or a general goes on the news and gives their perspective on Iraq or Afghanistan, having just
Yep.
served there a year earlier. Once again, there's no Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review. They can say whatever they want.
That's
But
right.
if they write a book, it's different. Yet you're still putting the same information out there just through a different medium. But it encapsulates everything that the government stands for when it comes to bureaucracy
Yeah.
and just ineptitude. So that's just how it goes. So I did the second one, True Believer, the one you're mentioning, and they took out 54. Not only did they take out 54 words, sentences, phrases, whatever, 54 redactions generally.
Uh-huh.
And they took 7 months, almost 7 months to do it, which made me have to push my publication date from spring to summer to the end of July. I think it was July 29th, I believe, which isn't great. It was my pub date was picked for a reason. And anyway, okay, fine. We just have to move the publication date. But this time I have my lawyers go and appeal these redactions and tie every single one of those 54 redactions to a publicly available United States government document, meaning
Mhm.
not from Wikipedia or somebody else's book or whatever. No, from a publicly available government document that anyone in the world can access. And
Mhm.
so they tied all 54 to publicly available US government documents. And then we won 37 on the 54. So even though all 54 were tied, they only let me win on 37. So for the paperback, I unredacted so people
Oh,
could find out. And this is where I think where I got them a little bit because now people can see, oh, wait a sec, they redacted Morocco here for a CIA black site, but Jack's lawyers tied it to a publicly available government document. Okay, well, that's off now. So now it's in the paperback, Morocco, for a CIA black site. Wait a sec. Didn't that just tell us that there's an actual CIA black site in
yes.
Morocco?
Yes.
Like, it just drives me crazy to talk about this sort of thing.
It's
Much better
stupid.
if they didn't do anything at all.
Yeah,
It's
right.
so ridiculous. They're giving up more through this process than they're keeping secret. So, anyway, once again, it's typical of the government and the military and the bureaucracy. That's just how it is. So I did it again for Savage Son, third one. I'm like, well, I should do this anyway. And so I'm getting farther away from my time in the military. I know nothing's secret. I didn't really do anything secret in the military. I kicked indoors in the middle of the night, just like every big city SWAT team is going to do tonight as they serve warrants. I just
Right.
did it in Iraq and Afghanistan with an AC-130 overhead and a Predator and a Reaper and whatever else was out there to help support. But essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
Target packages going to grab somebody just like every big city SWAT team's doing in a few hours here. But regardless, I submitted the third one, Savage Son. And once again, it had some redactions in it. I forget how many, not many, but they had some. And so I had my lawyers do it again. They put together this appeal and tied it to publicly available government documents, each and everything that was redacted, and submitted on time in the proper format, the whole thing. And they got back to us and said that something about they weren't going to accept. That's it. They weren't going to accept the appeal. And so I took that as code for quit bugging us with this fiction. We're supposed to be not working on nonfiction here. And so I've gone forward with that in mind ever since. So I do not submit anymore.
Well, I think you hit on a good point there. And I talked to somebody at Prepub that came to Thriller Fest 2 years back. And they essentially said that that stuff is there for the worst offenders, right? So, if you're doing the honest thing, you're trying to, it's that's not really for you. That's not really why they exist. But for the FBI, the backlog is 6 months. 6 months. So I was curious to ask you about that. And one thing I gotta ask you about. So you mentioned Colonel Jeff Cooper in your book, which automatically puts it in top five for me. You talk about Colonel Jeff Cooper, then you're good with me. So Quinn, you have him strapping on a 1911, but Tom, you have going with the Browning high power, the shortened Browning high power. What are you trying to say there?
Well, I'm using tools to differentiate the characters. That's one, and I'm also paying tribute to those guys like Colonel Cooper and some other guys that I mentioned in the book in that same paragraph, and also speak to the training that someone could have gotten back then.
Right.
From some of the best guys that were out there that were innovating, and surprisingly enough, in California in many cases. Not so much today, but back then in the 60s, that certainly was the case. And so I like to weave all that in for people like you, people that are going to recognize it, people who appreciate it, keep those names alive, keep those legacies alive. A
Yeah.
lot of times people forget where things came from. History is so important, but for some reason today, well, I know why, because of all these distractions we carry around in our
Mhm.
pockets. Some of that history gets forgotten, some of it gets misattributed to people.
Mhm.
Some people think they made it up themselves. They're so far behind, they think they're first.
Right. Yeah.
So I just try to get it right and try to tip my hat to as many people who were instrumental in developing the tactics, techniques, procedures that not just military and law enforcement use today, but citizens use today to
Mhm.
defend themselves and their families. So I like to weave all that stuff in there, and that was one way to do it.
There's a lot of really cool stuff in there like that. You mentioned the Eck knife, which I kind of had to look that up. I wasn't real familiar with it. And then something I thought was really kind of a cool, the Hackman, what is it, Puko? The Puko knife that one I
Yeah,
had to look up because I wasn't familiar with, but really interesting tools of the trade. And have you read To Ride, Shoot Straight, and Speak the
of
Truth?
course. Yeah, of course. I have it at the house.
Yeah, I got it right back there. Um, I know you don't have a lot of time. Let me ask you, I know that the second season of
Dark Wolf or
Journalist
Journalist. Yeah.
just wrapped. Well,
Yeah.
when is that supposed to release, or is there a release date yet?
No release date yet. I would suspect next summer, but you never really know with these things. But if the timeline remains the same as the past seasons, then it should come out next summer, and it's looking good. Oh my gosh, we
Oh,
have
I
some.
can imagine. Hey, look,
What, yeah,
Dark Wolf is amazing. Really,
thank,
really, really, really good.
thank
And
you,
my
thank.
only suggestion is maybe you stay away from vehicles. I would, if I were you,
I
I'd keep my
know it.
distance. Keep my
I
distance.
know it. I know it. Well, I filmed my cameo for True Believer this past summer, and it's a good one. It's a good one.
Okay, okay,
Uh,
cool.
Dark Wolf, yeah, Dark Wolf in episode 4. I get stitched up the side.
Oh,
Got to
I
take a
know.
little
I laugh
fall.
so hard every time I see that. It's like, oh, because I'll see it for a split second. I'm like, oh, he's fixing to die.
There it is. But I'm also in episode 7 at the very end. I'm
Yeah,
the
at the
father
CIA. Yeah.
and we got to film there, which was such an honor to film there. And
Oh, really?
got to go there, and a bunch of people came down that because I had a little touch point with that organization in 2006 in Baghdad that
Mhm.
actually informs a lot of my writing. And so some people that didn't have to be there that day came to say hi, which was really
Mhm.
special. Got to go through the CIA museum, and just a really special place, and it was an honor to be able to film it. Really special for everybody involved that day. So I got to do that and got to play a guard, and that was fun. I got a line of dialogue in there, I think.
I know. Progress, right?
That's
Progress.
right.
Yeah.
Moving up in the world, moving up in the world. But it's been going back to some of those things, the Browning high power. So I wanted
Yeah.
to also explain, give it like a little origin, a little hint as to where James Reese gets some of these things. So James Reese is a 9 millimeter guy. So I wanted to seed
Right.
some of that
Right.
with his dad with the Browning high power. And the one that it's also in the author's note, but I think I was maybe a year and a half or so off with the modifications to the gunsmithing that was done
Oh,
with that. But once again, it's one of those things where I'm like, well, maybe he got an early, we got a test, and maybe that sort of a thing. So, which is a really cool pistol.
what was it? Was it Bruiser? Is it Bruiser in Terminalist? That's the 45 guy. Is
Yeah.
that
So I use
right?
that
Okay. All
calibers to
right.
tell a story.
Okay.
But people get to find out where the watch came from, where the 1968
Yeah.
Summer came from. Wanted to think
Yeah.
of a
Yeah.
creative way to do that, and also explain some of the more family lineage and a little bit of the World War II generation to differentiate it from the Vietnam generation, which in turn differentiates how Tom Reese treats his son Reese and how he passes along lessons, which is
Mhm.
different from the way his father passed along lessons from World War II. Because those World War II guys came back and got to work and built this country
Yeah.
into what it is
Right.
today. And they didn't whine, didn't complain. They used the GI Bill, some of them, and some of them just got right down to work. And that is what I wanted to express through the actions of the father and the
Mm.
lessons he passes to Tom, who takes him into Vietnam. So it was almost he got lessons and didn't even know they were lessons because they were across a card table, which his dad got good at playing poker, going back and forth across the oceans during World War II. So it was I wanted everything to mean something and to have a connection with the James Reese generation that I write about in my contemporary thrillers.
That's part of your adding value too. When you describe those processes, when you talk about how those generational differences, how one generation informs another, I think that's also another aspect of your creating value for people. One thing I do want to mention, I know we're going over a little bit, but so Tet really was. So it was a military victory for the Americans, but it was a psychological defeat, and most of that had to do with the quote unquote fourth estate, right? So the media. And I was that made me start thinking about, well, today I wonder if we could consider social media like the fifth estate. And I see it as big or greater a threat as the fourth estate was in back in Vietnam and the Tet Offensive and what an impact that had. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but
Yeah, I mean, the fourth estate is supposed to be a check on government, essentially,
yeah.
supposed to keep it in line with our founding principles, particularly the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's supposed to keep them honest. And now, and it started changing with Vietnam as part of my research. Going back to the Civil War, there were photos. Okay, we have a photo here and there. And then we move forward into to World War One. We're still not quite there yet when it comes to even newsreels. And we get to World War Two, and people are getting their news, a lot of it, from the newsreels that go in front of movies on Saturday afternoon. And you're getting a distinctly American take on things and that helps the war effort because they were part of this war. Everyone was impacted by World War II.
Right.
And then we move on a little far. We get a little farther down the line. We have the JFK assassination, of course, and then we move into further involvement in Vietnam. And now we have televisions in most people's homes, and we're watching the 6 o'clock news, and we're seeing it day in and day out.
Mhm.
And I think around this time is when the media, when the press realizes that they have this power, and not the power to keep the government in check, but the power to influence the populace, to influence events. So people talk about power, and of course, absolute power corrupts.
Mhm.
Absolutely, we all know that. We all know that quote. But and there was one from Charlie Kirk that I've seen online since his assassination that talks about to find out someone's true character, give them power.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
and and really, I think it's around this time where you have reporters realizing given this power because of how things are reported, meaning the devices in our living rooms that people are going to turn on at 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
And that's different than seeing a picture in a paper and reading a story as you have your morning coffee and go off to work.
Right.
Now you're seeing it with your spouse. Now you're seeing it with your kids. And it's a different experience. It's a different medium through which to consume the news. So there's some power involved in this, and
Mhm.
we start to see it. And I describe it in the book, and I describe how during this time frame they really do influence events. And then you have, of course, you have even earlier, just a little bit earlier than this, some other things that are happening, and some behind the scenes intrigue between the State Department, the CIA, and the executive branch, and how those are working, and who's vying for what to happen in Southeast Asia and why. And all of this coincides during essentially this decade of the 1960s, and really changed how Americans view consume the news, and then how the news can influence these events, not just by reporting it, but by shaping it. And
Absolutely.
so Vietnam, I think, was one of the first times where we really see that change in a meaningful way.
Mhm. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've got a full schedule. I could talk to you all day about some of this stuff.
So
So
great to see you. So great to talk to you. I always love
yeah, good
talking.
to see
I can
you.
talk books and reading and film and television all day
Yeah.
long. I absolutely love talking about this stuff. And what I guess maybe one other tidbit I thought my plan was to, and I still is my plan, just the timeline has shifted, but was to do another Tom Reese, maybe not this next one, but the one after type of a thing. Um,
Oh, yeah.
because this took so long, like we talked about, because
Yep.
so much more time, energy, and effort were required to make this the book that I wanted it to be, rather than just playing that Creedence Clearwater Revival and then just writing a regular novel.
Right.
That took that took a lot. So I think there's going to be more than a couple year break before I dive into the next one. But I do have a plan for Tom Reese. I do have a plan for the Hastings family. I do have multi-generational. So I do have plans for all these things, and it's just the timing and how efficient I can get with my schedule to move forward. But I'll be going back to James Reese for the
Well, very, very cool. I mean, you're creating a whole universe here that people are very interested in, very, layered, intricate, engaging. You mentioned the Hastings. That I mean, that's a whole different storyline that I mean, if Amazon picked that up, I mean, people I think would be fascinated with that storyline as well. So, Jack, I really appreciate your time. And let me my town hall review should be dropping same day that your book comes out, October 7th. So people will be able to check out the review and of course order your book, available for pre-order. By the time this goes out, it may be after the release date, depending. So anyway, people can run out and get your book. I can't recommend it more highly. So thanks,
thing.
thanks, Jack. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you for everything, and can't wait to read your upcoming one.
All right, it's coming.
Awesome.
All
Take
right.
care. Talk soon.
All right. Thank you.